Good evening, everyone. Finance Committee meeting for July 5th. So I'm going to touch the agenda items, and there's been a change from what was posted, so we'll talk about that for a second, and then we'll jump right into our items. So first, we're going to discuss transfers tonight. We had next on here for committee reorganization, but Scott was able to pull up the chart, and we were confirmed that we do have 75 days from the start of the fiscal year. And so the team felt it was better that we wait to have the full team here to volunteer and vote for that stuff. So, we'll discuss any liaison reports. There is no correspondence. And then we'll talk about any kind of next meeting, town meetings that are coming up. Yeah. All right, so first we'll hit the transfers. So Andrew, if you want to kick us off with that.
Sure. Let's turn this on. All right. Fiscal 23 year-end transfers. Did you just want to go down the list, or did you want to talk about the larger items first?
We can hit the larger items first.
All right. There are three abnormal items this year. One is $150,000 for fire salaries. They had a new contract this year, and this is the retro portion of that contract. The other two big items are for town council expenses for $70,000 and town offices expenses for $150,000. For town council, there were a lot of union negotiations this year, as well as ongoing investigations. And as far as town office expenses go, although we are in a long-term contract, which is expiring next year for electricity, there is a solar component to our bills, and then that we do pay 80% of market price for that. And since electricity prices are high, or have been high lately, that's what you're seeing. To the extent that there's extra solar that's not used by the town, we also are in agreements with Avon to sell a portion of those. But this year they didn't buy as much as they used to, which is also contributing to this overage. We do have a guest here. If you would like to talk about the fire contract.
Chief, do you want to, or you good?
Does anybody have any questions?
Does anybody have any questions on that amount? Okay.
Well, I just have a question, is we have this for the fire, but we don't have it for the police. And weren't the contracts settled around the same time? So
Yeah.
how does that work?
The police department, the retro is being covered by the vacancies that were in the budget. So positions that were unfilled, whatever savings there is being used to cover these transfers as well as to pay for the retro.
So what was that
Well,
total?
This is the fiscal 23, the fiscal 23 budget, so the budget
Yeah.
that ended last week,
Right,
that we voted on town meeting in 22. So we had a lot of unfilled positions in the police department that they were hoping to fill.
right, I was just asking, what's that total
Fire,
amount?
thankfully, did not have a ton of unfilled positions.
No.
So.
No, in the police budget, what didn't we expend in the total police budget? In order to, because we're using,
How much did we carry
Yeah.
over? is what-
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like over 200,000.
All right, couple numbers. Before the contract, I think we were estimating that we'd have $700K surplus to spend out of the police budget to cover transfers.
okay,
The retro portion was 200-ish, I think. And they finished, like my projections for payroll are about 350K surplus.
okay,
Is
so the
Is that in
fire
addition
budget.
to the retro? Sorry.
Okay. No, go ahead.
Is that in addition to the retro? So that's what's left after?
Yeah, so 300, my estimates were 350K of surplus that we can use for transfers.
Okay.
The retro is already paid for.
Yep.
The reason there's no request, obviously, but fire is fully staffed.
Yeah.
So they were pretty much down to the wire on theirs, where police was 7+ vacancies.
Right,
So that's why we have the difference between the two. That's why there's obviously not enough in fire.
And this
Okay.
is, just for those that are newer to the board, Marty or Sarah, this is a common thing that we see on a year-end transfer when we've just negotiated a new contract that has retroactive, because the contract had been up. So it goes back to the year before and people get paid like the back raises because they extended the contract as it had previously been. We often do see this, so that one actually the fire salaries didn't surprise me being on there, because we've seen that several times in the past.
Is it typically that large of an amount?
It varies, we've definitely seen it that high before in years past.
This,
And that's across the entire department.
in this particular year, again, both on police and fire, there were some real disparities between other communities. So this would probably, especially year one of the contract, was a heavier portion of the contract. The police one, actually, I think they'll both actually drop each year. The biggest part was educational incentives that were put in there and shift differentials. Good, build in a percentage, you know, if you're a sergeant, or if you're doing a night shift, or a captain in the case of the fire department, so that those shift differentials, those things made this a very heavy contract in the first year, but again, then it just kind of evens out.
So when we go into a contract year, is there any sort of, lack of a better term, fudge factor in the budget to take into consideration the increase due to a contract?
Well, we do typically know that we have year-end transfers, and there is typically somewhere. If we didn't do the year-end transfers, this is next year's free cash, is what essentially
Okay.
this is.
Well, and then we won't have that amount of money in the police transferable next year because what we did this year.
No, we don't
Correct.
expect to need it
Right.
at this point.
Yeah, because going into town meeting, one, we knew what the numbers for the contract were, so we could properly prepare for the salary, and two, we switched the way we were budgeting the positions in the department to make sure that we were covering everything.
So this is just a bookkeeping, because the
Yes.
salaries have already been expended, everybody's been made whole, the retros have happened, correct?
Yep.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, the whole sheet of what we're doing with the year-end transfers is bookkeeping.
So do we still have a surplus in the police budget though? Because you said we had 350 at the end of the year after their retros, and we're only transferring out about 240. So is there an additional 110, so what, does that go back into free cash?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and any line in the entire budget that we didn't spend as much as we had allocated, that's what goes to free cash in the year, all of them combined up.
And we
Can't
won't-
have any excessive revenue
Yes.
beyond what we had predicted
Yeah.
will become next year's free cash.
And we don't have the final certified free cash amount until what, like couple?
March.
Yeah, okay.
Spring.
Do we have an estimate where we think the number might land?
Not yet.
I ask them that every day.
And the budget closed, what, 2 business days ago? Come on, Andrew.
Any other questions for Chief?
Well, welcome aboard.
Thank you. And what was the date that we finally decided on for the?
Oh, for pinning,
Yeah.
the 17th, Monday the 17th.
So we'll get the notice up, but everybody is invited, Monday the 17th. It will be held at the senior center. We'll have an official pinning of the chief, the deputy chief, a captain,
Correct.
and a firefighter.
We have interviews for a firefighter Friday, so probably not.
All right. So all are welcome to attend.
Yeah, very nice.
What time?
6 PM, Senior Center on Summer Street.
Okay.
We'll pick you up on the way.
Because we went through the woods.
So, to the other large items on here, the town council expenses.
You know what's that?
Great, thank you.
Chief. Take care.
We knew we had a bunch of contracts that needed to be negotiated.
Yeah, these aren't just
Did you
contract
just-
negotiations, these are also, you're aware of at least one investigation that's been pretty widely publicized, and those investigations are pretty expensive. And we actually still have one other going on that I really can't talk about, but we had 2 others. So that's really what you're seeing there. But we also, we finished up work on our personnel policies, working with them, getting those up, and it's probably the biggest thing, that the investigations.
What were the, do we know what the, so this was additional expenses for town council, do we know what the total town council allocation was for last fiscal year?
I think the budget was 150.
So about 220 this.
Yeah, it was 150.
So those are the big ticket items. Any questions on the smaller ticket items from the group? I don't know that we need to go line by line from you, Andrew.
It's up to you.
Did we allocate the exact same amount for our town council expenses for this fiscal year? Because I imagine a lot of those investigations are not going to be done for quite some time.
I'm happy to say we are wrapping them up. I would love to say that I don't anticipate more, but I think we did up it in the budget, but obviously this was, police, fire, and DPW all had their contract years coming up, and they were all pretty much rewrites because there had been many years of just sort of MOUs on top of MOUs, so it was kind of, and this is the first round with Clifford and Kenny as counsel. So it was also putting language in that they were comfortable with in all of the contracts. So I actually anticipate next year, as far as that part goes, should be a little smoother.
Are these transfers normally perfectly round numbers?
I just, no. It's easier.
Yeah.
Never a quarter.
We've had down to the penny in years past,
Okay.
so
That's a pain to type into the system.
So these will all adjust and,
I assume that each of these is slightly over what's
Yeah.
needed on the line in question.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
so, yeah, I mean, you're doing a really good job keeping it nice and even. Anybody else have questions on the line items?
Oh, the assistant planner, that's just up the hours, the existing assistant planner, right?
Yeah.
Any luck with the full-time?
We haven't posted it yet. It was kind of waiting to see how things went with Rockland. They're still having a hard time. They wanted to go it on their own before trying a joint venture.
Okay.
So I'll reach out to them and see what their thoughts are.
Did they say that after our town meeting and when we voted?
Yeah, I was kind of saying, we pretty much had, I thought, an agreement that we would try it together, but I think they really just figured they would give it one more try on their own. I don't think they've been successful.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, I talked to one of our consultants, the Barrett Planning Group, the other day, and it's kind of the same as what we saw when we were talking before. There's just several communities in the area that are looking for a planner, and nobody's entering the field,
Mhm.
not for municipal planning anyway, so.
Well, I don't think we budgeted enough for it, and the idea was to actually find somebody because we could join with another and actually be competitive with the salary that
That
way.
was our plan, so, and I think that's probably still gonna be the plan. I don't, like I said, I don't think that they're successful with the amount, and they
Yeah.
up their amount too.
So have we posted it yet?
No.
Do we have a job description?
I do actually have a couple different job descriptions.
Because weren't we planning on posting that July 1st? Wasn't that the plan?
Wasn't my plan, no.
Yeah, I don't know that it was stipulated for that.
I mean, the money's available July 1.
Right.
I mean, I can post it whenever, but I was more looking to see what Rockland wants to do.
And on the liability insurance, that we pulled $180,000 from that. What's the impact of liability, that on what we budgeted for FY '24? We were $180,000 over.
We reduced the liability insurance budget to help pay for, to help balance the budget, based on how it ran this year. So there's not going to be a surplus out of that line next year.
Yeah, we actually, I think we just got those numbers in too, for our renewals. You know, last year was our first year with Maya, and we were getting estimates, but we purposely had a higher number in there because we didn't know what was gonna happen with them. So I think we got a more accurate number this year, so yeah, we won't have that surplus again.
So what's the actual for FY '23 and what do we budget for FY '24 for liability insurance?
For '23, I'm seeing $712K spent for liability insurance against a budget of $1 million. And I believe next year's liability insurance was $800K per budget.
300?
800.
Oh, wait, I was gonna say, I was like, okay, all right. Yeah,
Yeah, that wouldn't have been a good.
yeah, okay.
Anything else from the group?
Sort of unrelated, but wasn't Plymouth County gonna be voting on the pension? What was the final, that was coming up shortly after our last meeting
Yeah, the
on?
selectmen voted to approve it, and enough towns did vote to approve it.
Okay.
So that will be, I think, our cost would be 90 grand, what's the minus over each year for the next 5 years?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we do have some interesting things to add to the budget next year.
So to that point, because the gentleman from the Plymouth County Retirement, I don't know what his name was, but he said we would be paying it off in 5 years.
This bump.
No, we would be fully funded in 5 years when we pay. That's what he said in the Board of Selectmen meeting. And we know, we've got that letter from PERAC that said, in the last meeting that we were here, we estimate it's gonna extend it 3 years.
I think we were beyond 5 years anyways, weren't we, Andrew?
No, he stood right there and said 5 years. I was watching it from a home and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, and nobody called him out on that because it's like, he said 5 years, we fully funded. Like, so what's the impact on our funding and this additional COLA?
I think that's all he was talking about, was the COLA would be funded in 5 years, because that's
No, he said fully funded. He talked about being fully funded in 5 years. Because isn't that our plan?
The Plymouth County estimates for being fully funded is 2030. And so the thing about PERAC is, it's largely an academic exercise. Based on the letter that you sent, it seems that Plymouth County's financial estimates are a little bit aggressive. So they're saying that if they were to be more reasonable, we would extend it another year, or another 2 or 3 years.
Right.
I'm not sure if they're able to compel Plymouth County to change that.
Well, when's the next time they're up for reevaluation? Because they have to readjust the numbers every 2 or 3 years, don't they? That was like every 2 years.
I think they're on a yearly schedule. I'm not 100% sure, but we can check.
All right. So that COLA adjustment, is that, we've got it we can cover it in the budget? Because we didn't,
It's not going to
next
affect.
year's budget.
Yeah, it's not going to affect fiscal '24.
oh, okay, so
It's gonna
this
hit-
is only for FY '25.
Yeah, 25.
25, 26, 27.
Right.
28, 20, it's 5 years of
Right.
$95,000 extra. And that's why I think that's what he meant. I don't think, because we were looking at 7 years before anything drops off for us as far as our payments for.
I thought he said
Pension.
fully funded. I thought he used that term.
He might have.
He might have used the term meaning that COLA will be fully funded in 5 years, not.
Because that is the plan
Not
for
the
the
whole
COLA.
thing.
I don't know why you'd use fully funded for a COLA.
If you know.
You're paying it each year.
If you know one of the selectmen, you can take it up with him.
Do we vote on this?
We do vote on it,
Yeah.
yes. And do we have the version that Daniel signs?
You can take one of these
I
copies.
was gonna say, I know I've signed one in past years, so.
I don't want all the zeros on the one I signed. Okay, any other, any further? Oh, good.
Sorry, I'll make a motion to approve the fiscal year 23 year-end transfers.
I'll second.
So the motion is to approve fiscal 23 year-end transfers. It's been seconded. All those in favor?
Well, we don't-
Or, I'm sorry, any further discussion?
Can I just put in, can we just put in the amount that we're transferring, because it's 441,000, for an estimated?
Huh?
There's a total dollar amount associated with these transfers.
Oh, yeah.
And it's 441,400.
Yep.
Estimated, I understand. If we could just, I just feel like we
No.
should put the amount.
These are not estimated. These are actual.
No, the rest, he just said they were estimated.
Well, he.
No, he said he rounded them so that, like, he went up so that they would be even, so that they would be easier round numbers to put in the system, but that these are the actual numbers. Correct.
Right. So when I said estimated, I meant from Monday. I refreshed the data to make sure that nothing changed this morning. So the numbers are what's going to be voted. They can't change after today.
So.
When we
it's-
vote them, it
this-
has to stay that number.
Okay, so the snow and ice salaries is exactly $14,000.
It's 13 and change.
So
Okay,
what-
so then, that's what I'm saying, that's what I'm trying to get at. It's like,
No,
then,
so what we're doing
right,
is we are transferring $6,500 from snow and ice expenses and $7,500 from police salaries for a total of $14,000 to the snow and ice line. The amount that we're spending on that line is slightly less than 14, but we're transferring the round number.
right, so then we can up to $441,400. I feel like if we're voting, I don't like that there's an amount that needs to get transferred from some bucket to something else. And that we up to, and we're only approving up to $441,000.
We're transferring these exact amounts.
Yeah.
What Andrew has said is, those are, in each of these places that we're transferring it into, the amount that we need is slightly less than that, but he made the numbers round so it is easier to look at and deal. So it might be, and I'm just hypothetically here, so Andrew, don't take it as if I'm saying right, the snow and ice, what we need might be $13,972.51. He didn't put that exact number, he put the round.
Okay, so then
numbers
can we
that-
just put the amount that we're, total amount we're transferring?
But that is what we're
That is what,
transferring.
that is this.
But then-
These numbers are what we're transferring.
Yeah, we don't, in the vote, we didn't
You should
have the
have that.
441,400.
It should be part of the motion.
Yes, that's all I was asking.
So the total, what is the total?
You either, yeah, I mean, if that's the total.
So the official,
Go from
let
account
me,
to account.
I will retract my motion so that I can restate it,
Okay,
if you want to retract your second.
I'll retract my second.
Okay. I move, and I'll take that for when I get there. I make a motion that we transfer $201,600 from police salaries to the 13 line items specified on the year-end transfers sheet that was provided to us by Andrew. And in addition to that, that we transfer $6,500 from snow and ice expenses and $7,500 from police salaries to the snow and ice salaries line. and that we transfer $40,000 from police salaries and $180,000 from liability insurance expenses, $70,000 of which is going to town council expenses, and $150,000 of which is going to town offices expenses. And also that we transfer $4,000 from water expenses to water salaries, and $1,800 from civil defense expenses to civil defense salaries, for a total of $441,400 of transfers.
I'll second.
So the motion is to approve FY '23 year-end transfers in those amounts. It's been,
Gonna repeat them?
no, I'm not going to do that. It's been seconded. Any further discussion?
That,
Just to
that-
clarify, anything unspent after the transfer still goes to free cash? It's just
Correct.
coming from a
Yes.
different line
Just
item?
coming from a
Okay.
different spot.
The dollars and pennies that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Paul, is that good?
Yep, thank you. Appreciate it.
Anything further discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And it passes. Very good, Andrew, thank you.
Can't wait to see that motion.
Kelly, did you get all that?
All right, so next, or do we have any liaison reports? Imagine we do not. We do not have any correspondence, so our next topic for the agenda to wrap us up is to talk about the next meeting. As Scott had mentioned, we're looking at a special town meeting this year.
Yeah, so there'll be a special town meeting, we're gonna vote, call for it, or if the selectmen will vote to open the warrant, this coming Monday night. The plan is to have a special town meeting on a Saturday, October 14th, 9 a.m.
Did you say Saturday?
It is a Saturday.
You did say Saturday.
So at this time, we'll have the Fire Station Building Committee on there, and there'll be a request from the developer and the Southfield redevelopment authority for zoning changes. And there could be a couple other things, because when you open a warrant, you can never tell what will happen. So there may be some housekeeping things. Other than that, it should be a fairly simple meeting. We'll have, and I recommend, you need to probably meet on September 6th or 13th. That would get to be in compliance with the charter as far as that 75 days goes.
Yeah.
Those are the two Wednesdays before September 14th. So we would probably have the Fire Station Building Committee come in and meet with you on those nights, or I don't know if you're interested in anybody from the SRA coming in here. I think that they're going to have a meeting. There certainly are financial implications to it. They will be having meetings with the planning board, and obviously a meeting with the selectmen. You'll probably hear the same stuff, but I would think that we could probably have them come here also, either on the 6th or the 13th, whichever one you choose.
Obviously, we should meet long before that to do our reorganization.
Well, that was part of the 75-day requirement,
Yeah.
so.
You want me to meet in August?
Yeah, and so that's,
August is okay.
Yeah.
that's the thing is, do we want to meet just to reorg, or can we actually make it part of some
I
other
could get
things?
those groups to come in August.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so that's fine.
So what I'll do for the team here is I'll send out an email with some dates, and we can all have some back and forth and see which ones work best for everyone. And the goal would be to get all 9 of us in that meeting for particularly the reorg, so we can all be part of that. So look out for an email from me, and we'll figure out what works for everyone, second half of August into the first half of September. Does that work?
Yep.
Sounds good.
Cool, perfect. Anything else? Cool, very good.
Well, just, what's the status of the town's financial policies?
They're pretty much done. Trying to work with the consultant to get him to come to one of my selectmen meetings. I'll send them out to everybody, you guys can take a look at them. I'll send out a copy of what we have now, the original 2006 version that's out there, plus ours. And we pretty much took what your original comments were. And like again, I worked with the finance director from Duxbury, who's now retired, and he's sort of a hired hand out there. He's worked for several communities. And we looked at, how do we tailor them specifically for Abington? And I think Andrew and I and did a pretty good job at it. So I'll get him out to you to take a look at it. But I'm just kind of working out with him when he can come to a selectmen's meeting and we can get them to vote.
Do we have to vote, or just the selectmen vote on those, or do we have to vote on those?
It's the
or-
selectmen policy.
Okay.
It's kind of, I mean, they're not much different than the ones that you actually have now. It's sort of, it's more, the concepts are the same. Things like not using free cash to balance the budget, or, I think the biggest one that we probably wrestled with was a percentage that we would not, keep our borrowing down to, and looking at that, and not having language that actually makes it so you're pigeonholed into doing something. It's language that's a little more like, calls them out as guidelines. And it makes sense, obviously, I don't know, I think there's probably at least one person that's been on this committee for a long time, but people change, and, so the idea of them, it isn't, again, to have this sort of rigid, this is what you shall follow. I think it's just to say, as people come and go, these are the guidelines, these are the things, whether it's the manager changing, select board members changing, finance committee members changing, it's just saying, these are some of the best practices, and you should keep them in mind as we go. So we did take, there was a lot of stuff in there that was definitely not, a second person had gotten in there after John Madden, who was the consultant that I'm working with, and actually made them much more rigid and much more tailored to that specific town. So I think it, the final product's a lot nicer.
But if it's a policy, not a guideline, we don't have a whole lot of wiggle room with that. If it's being voted on as a policy saying, this, you shall or shall not do that. That was, that's,
It specifically, it more reads that, you shall endeavor to do this, and you shall, and I'll send them to you again, but yeah, I mean, but certainly there are some things in there that are, you definitely don't want, you don't want to be using free cash to balance your budget, and I think that we can all agree on that.
but there was that issue around the debt, though. How
That-
much debt we
yeah.
could take on, and it felt like that policy that we had, that was
Very
in there,
rigid.
was very rigid and kind of restricting us, like, almost like, okay, well, you can't fund a police car or a fire truck this year because you're over.
Yeah, and I think that, we looked at that specifically to try and make that so it reads more of a guideline, that gives you that ability that, yeah, you know what, extraordinary things will happen. I will get them out to everybody. I know I just sent them to you and Chris a while back, but I'll send you and send everybody what we have now, so you'll have something to compare it to. I mean, again,
Well, when is the selectmen gonna vote on them?
probably, I don't know if I'll have to check with the consultant. I thought I had a date in July with him, but I'm not sure if he's available.
I personally would prefer to just get them after the selectmen vote.
Just what?
I prefer to just wait till after the selectmen vote, and that's what we're working with. We've had enough time to go through this. We gave them our comments. Whatever they do, that's what it is, and that's what we're following. That's just my take.
And like I said, again, if you look at what you have now, you're not gonna see any, it isn't going to be a big surprise. It's not a reinvention of the wheel. Policies are just sound policies, in the way, it was more just let's refresh them and update them, so.
Do you happen to have a copy that shows the before and actual? Or
Now, the before one, I don't even think is that, you wouldn't even find it in a Word file in
Oh,
this
really?
town anywhere. It's a PDF.
Fresh
that
start.
Yeah. I have, my version that I stole from Duxbury and then re-edited. I can show you. I scribbled all over it in red pencil because the consultant and I are just kind of going back and forth with Andrew in the office, trying to, figure out what was too rigid, what didn't make sense. But there isn't like a red line version. No.
So has the original policy document that we got been changed significantly from what's coming out now? Because the original one was basically Duxbury's.
Yeah. Yeah, it's changed, it's changed quite a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was mostly the comments that we heard and what we looked at was the rigidity of it, that there were things in there that were superfluous, that were, having the whole thing on the capital committee, things that were just kind of cut and paste out of.
Yeah, there was stuff that
anyways.
didn't even seem like it needed to be in there.
But the other part of it is that, the existing, matching it up to what we have existing, we didn't want to dumb it down either to, and not be as,
It was in the old one, 2006.
yeah.
So,
The point is, it was my charge or my, desire when I came here was to update almost all the policies, starting with the personnel policy, which took the longest amount of time, and then the financial policy, our purchasing policy, things like that. So we're getting there. This was probably the tougher one of all of them for some reason.
Well, I mean, we're off the agenda anyway. Anybody else have anything else?
That's a liaison report.
yeah, that was, yep.
I mean, it can be a quick meeting, guys. We don't have to,
Yeah, I'm good.
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, second?
All right, motion to adjourn has been seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
I
Any opposed? All right, we adjourn.